I'll tell you a word, which I heard after Chof Shevat, before the Shloshim. So Mustama right up from Rabbi Yossel Weinberg. And on this week's Sedra, it's by Yishma Yisroi. Yisroi came with Tzipoira Eishes Moshe Shnei Boneha. So you just finished a few Sedris, which the climax of everything, the Giluyim by the Makis, the Giluyim of Yitzias Mitzrayim, the Giluyim of the first mitzvahs, the Giluyim of Kriyas Yamsuf, the Giluyim of the Shira. Laura missed it. She wasn't there. She never had Hakofish, she never had Tkiyas, never had Fabrengen. One day, Tzipor came after the Matan Torah altogether with Yisrael. So Rabbi Wammer said this, I think it's a medrash or it's somewhere, that when Mashiach comes, she's going to be right there in the front. So if you think about the Rebbetzin, all the stories that you hear about the Rebbetzin, Ad Echad, they all, a common factor in all the stories is that the Rebbetzin was a genius, a giant, a brilliant person. Grace of Moichin, the Frierdiker Rebbe hired Malamdim for his daughters. Very cultured, very loved music. Nagina, she said in B'Sayf Yomeha, when she was in her 80s, that she still hears in her ears the nigunim which the Rebbe Rashab, her grandfather, sang when he was davening Barichas. She wasn't like a Poshet mensch or something. She was a very, very, she knew how to appreciate. And you hear the stories about the Rebbe having Yechidus, as Rabbi Feller just mentioned, that the Rebbe had people through the night. I was in Yechidus more than 24 times. A lot of times it was, early was when I was there with kids, it maybe 11 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night. Or the worst thing was, when you're supposed to go in at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, you're a bach or something, and somebody, big shot, didn't turn up. So the worst thing for the mosquito would be that there was a space, nobody's there. Hey, Shmuel, you got to go in right now. Like Groner with some running, or like Krinsky or somebody, and throw you in with mamish. There's somebody coming out in a minute, and you have to stand there right by the door, because the one who was supposed to come for an hour, they had an appointment at 10 o'clock, he's been delayed till 10:30. They had to fill up. There's so many different Zaytik stories about the Yechidus. I was in Yechidus at 3 in the morning, and at 4 in the morning. I don't remember if I was ever in at 5, but I was in at 6 in the morning. And there was sometimes Yechidus even later than that. And everybody, whoever you talk to about Yechidus, will tell you that they were exhausted. They just took a trip. A balabas here in London, a Gvir, and he had a big business problem. And he told me, this over 50 years ago, he said, he was sitting in Yechidus. He said, I was terrified that I'm going to fall asleep from the monotonous whir of the wretched clock on the desk. He was talking about the whole tzir. But people said they came in and they didn't, and every single person said they came in at 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, and the Rebbe was just like he's just starting business. Just now beginning, full of energy, full of light. His eyes are sparkling. Right smack in whichever Indian the person is in. So I'm in Lomdis, I'm in problem, whatever happens, communal affairs, totally there. Because it's not an easy job being a Lubavitcher Rebbe. But how many times did we think that every single one of those 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, Yechidison, there was a woman sitting in a house waiting for him. The Rebbetzin told my shver, he asked her, he was very assertive, and he asked the Rebbetzin, does it disturb you? Or does it wake you up when the Rebbe comes in after Kosher Bracha, 4 o'clock in the morning? Right? Does it disturb you? And she said, no, I'm always waiting. I don't want him to come home to a dark house. So she played the Ashes Moshe plus. And the one hand, she wasn't there by all the Chaviyot. And on the other hand, she was there making sure that space of the Rebbe and protecting him and doing, as you said before, many shlichusim for the Rebbe. So if you see, Rebbetzin spoke, my daughter was there at the age of 2, Chanukah, Tovshim Em Zayin, and Rebbetzin related to her like Rebbetzin was almost 86, like you relate to a 2-year-old. And there was a boy of 5 years old who was precocious and not an easy kid. He was there with his parents and family. And the Rebbetzin was an elegant hostess, and she had a big chocolate cake with chocolate icing. And she was sitting there and with plates and forks and cut pieces of cake for each one. And she came up to the boy. He said, I want to cut my own. 5 years old. So what did the Rebbetzin do? As a mechanech, she didn't say, no, you're not. I'm the boss in this house. It's dangerous. I'm not letting you do it. What kind of chutpinyak are you? Why don't you do like your parents do? There's 100 ways that some people, unfortunately, who are not the Rebbetzin would say. The Rebbetzin said to him, look, if you take a piece of cake, you're going to take 2 smaller pieces. I want you to have a big piece, so I'm cutting it. So the Rebbetzin knew how to talk to a 2-year-old little Emela, to a 5-year-old precocious kid, to a 8-year-old. Rabbi Klapman was telling about the story with his daughters and how the Rebbetzin knew each one to give the candy, to give the ice cream, how to do it. A bas mitzvah girl, we heard a story. Louise Hager, who was as a teenager, she once told me that the Rebbetzin worked out. She was able to go straight in. Then the same way, the bar mitzvah boy came and she said, tell me over the mimer or the pilpul. Let's see me a nigger. And she was there. Had something to say about everything. Then if a great intellectual came, I was there certain times, for example, Yud Aleph Shevat Tavshin Mem, a very, very big crowd. I was just in Crown Heights for less than 24 hours. But during that time, we were doing my Shema, and we went that the Rebbetzin had a problem with her legs. So the people she met us all together. We have Shmuel Chayfer, Olav Ajalem, who just passed away, was there. Mashver, maybe 1 or 2 others. And she was talking about London and what was special about it and what we did. You know, she had a way to speak to every person on their level. Whenever you spoke to her, it was not about you. I mean, she made it about you. It was not about her. She was there to think what is the way to speak to you. You never, no story you'll hear when the Rebbetzin said, you know, I'm having a hard time. I'm worried right now about this, that, the other. Or I got this big job I got to do. That was never there. It was where, you know, it was always somehow or another, where are you holding? But really, those are all manifestations. Those are Kleinigkeit. All those stories. She was a genius. She was a giant. Reb Zalman Gerari came to the Rebbetzin tens of years before and said, why don't you ask the Rebbe to make a self-imposed curfew. The Rebbe should be, you're a woman, no biological children, sitting alone in New York City at night. In New York, the place where nobody's living in the house with them. Ask the Rebbe to please come home at least 12 o'clock at night or 1 o'clock. You know, if a man comes home from his office at 9 o'clock, it's a late night. 10 o'clock, 11, 12 o'clock. But that would be called an early evening for the Rebbe. Make early evenings not later than midnight. That kind of an arrangement. And the Rebbetzin said, Chas v'sholem, Menschen darfen hem haben. People need him. I should stand in the way. Her life. Not that she had a feeling for some person. The 1% that you spoke about, or whatever the percent was that actually went into the house, she was moist nefesh for the 99. She was moist nefesh that should be a Rebbe. And she's the one that encouraged the Rebbe to become a Rebbe. She's the one that said, but the Klal Yisrael, it was 4 years after the Holocaust, 4.5 years after the Holocaust, Tafshin Yud. The Jewish people, even today in 2021, are in the middle of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Imagine what it was like then. It was like, Mamish, it was a job of just picking everyone from the floor. I heard from Rabbi Moshe Harrison a couple of weeks ago at Fabrengen. He said he was a Rav, maybe it was Bar Levi, I don't remember who it was, one of these Rabbonim, Chabad. And he said that he met some Godel Rav, some, not Chabad Rav. This was being around, maybe Tovshin Lami, Tovshin Mem, in those years. And that Rav said, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, what he has done, he has created the whole agenda for Klal Yisrael. Right? But he said, it's not such a remarkable thing given the army that he has. That kind of an army, it's not such a surprise. So Rabbi Harrison asked this rabbi, and what did you tell him? So he said to him, Kein hat hem nicht gegeben der Armee. Nobody gave him that army. He created it. He created it. Yesh Me'ayin. He says, you take your people, create them into an army. And you'll also be able to Uftitan. So the Rebbetzin understood all that. She was a very, very smart person. She was mamash moisen nefesh. That's Elamai. So what can we do? Achayiten and Liba is saying that each of us, Kol chad v'chad l'fum shira delay, to go out. Our Mesiras Nefesh is a small going out of your comfort zone, as you mentioned. A small thing to do that you don't do because inertia, you're just lazy or never did it before, you're embarrassed to do it. A little thing. Or to refrain from a small thing you know that you shouldn't be doing. A small thing. And exclude it from your life. And that's a reasonable, a high litin. The Rebbe said that the sun is in the sky, but it's reflected on every individual drop of rain, the whole entire sun. So every one of us is like a little drop of water. Not like the ocean, but each one. And the Rebbetzin was aware this is the Dor HaShvi, and what it meant. It was a joint effort. It's difficult to imagine that the Rebbe would be able to have achieved without that whole backup of the Rebbetzin. So, and we should all think what we can do. And to Mashiach. L'chaim, l'chaim.